Hi, what's going on, everybody? Lexi right here, and today we're going to be going over the first book of the Bible, Genesis. We're going to be going over creation. So, we're going to be going over what really happened and explain each part of Genesis. So, if you don't want to see this type of video, go ahead and click off now. Alright, if you stuck around, I greatly appreciate you. And we're gonna get started. So, Genesis 1, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 1 is about creation. And it says, right at the beginning, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning means time itself had a starting point. God already existed before creation. Heavens and earth means everything. You know, the universe, sky, land, stars, all creation. God is presented immediately as powerful, eternal, and sovereign. Genesis 1:2, formless and empty, which means darkness covers the deep, and God's Spirit moves over the waters. Meaning that creation is unfinished here, like a blank canvas before painting. The 6 days of creation. God creates through speech, and God said. This emphasizes divine authority. Day 1, light and darkness. Genesis 1, verse 3 through 5. God says, "Let there be light." Light appears before the sun exists, meaning that God brings order out of chaos. Light symbolizes goodness, life, and truth. God separates light, which equals day, and darkness equals night. This is the first act of organization. Day 2, sky and waters. Genesis 1, verse 6 through 8. God separates waters above from waters below. This forms the sky, or firmament, which meaning is that God continues bringing structure to creation. Day 3, land, seas, vegetation. Genesis 1:9 through 13. God gathers waters so dry land appears. He creates plants, trees, vegetation, meaning that creation becomes habitable and life-supporting. Notice that God repeatedly says, "It was good." This means creation is functioning according to His purpose. Day 4, sun, moon, and stars. Genesis 1, verse 14 through 19. God creates lights in the sky for daylight, seasons, signs, timekeeping. Meaning that the sun and moon are created things, not gods. This mattered because neighboring cultures worshiped them. God shows that He rules over them. Day 5, sea creatures and birds. Genesis 1:20 through 23. God fills sea and sky with life. He blesses them, "Be fruitful and multiply," meaning that life is meant to flourish. Day 6, animals and humanity. Genesis 1:24 through 31. God creates land animals. Then comes the climax of creation. "Let us make mankind in our image." Humans made in God's image. This means humans uniquely reflect God through reason, morality, creativity, relationship, and stewardship. Humans are given dominion, not exploitation. Responsibility over creation. God creates male and female. Both equally bear God's image. Key point: humans are portrayed as deeply valuable. At the end, very good. Everything is complete. Genesis 2, 1 through 3, the seventh day. God rests. This doesn't mean exhaustion. It means completion, satisfaction, setting apart rests as holy. This introduces the biblical principle of Sabbath rest. Genesis 2, 4 through 25, a closer look at humanity. Genesis 2 zooms in on humans. Genesis 1 is the overview. Genesis 2 gives details. Adam created in 2 verse 7. God forms man from dust and breathes life into him, meaning that humans are both physical, dust, and spiritual, God's breath. This shows intimacy in creation. The Garden of Eden, 2 verse 8 through 14. God plants the Garden of Eden. It contains beauty, food, rivers, and life. Important trees: 1, the tree of life, which represents ongoing life. 2, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which represents moral choice and obedience. God commands, don't eat from it, meaning love and obedience require genuine choice. It is not good for man to be alone. 2 verse 18. The first thing called not good. God creates woman. Adam says, bone of my bones, meaning partnership, equality, companionship. This becomes the foundation for marriage. The two of them shall become one flesh. Genesis 2 verse 25. They were naked and unashamed, meaning perfect innocence, no shame, no brokenness, no fear. Genesis 3, the fall of humanity. This is one of the most important chapters in the Bible. It explains sin, shame, death, human suffering. The serpent tempts Eve in 3 verse 1 through 5. The serpent questions God. Did God really say? Temptation begins with doubt. The serpent twists truth. He promises, you will be like God. Core temptation, anatomy, choosing self-rule over God. The forbidden fruit, 3 verse 6. And you can read along in your own Bible if you want to. We're in Genesis 3, starting on verse 6. Eve sees good for food, pleasing, desirable. She eats. Adam eats too, meaning this is deliberate disobedience. Sin enters human experience. Immediate consequences, 3 verse 7. Their eyes open. They feel shame, guilt, and fear. They cover themselves. Huge change. Innocence is gone. Hiding from God, 3 verse 8 through 13. Instead of running to God, they hide. The blame starts. Adam, the woman. Eve, the serpent. Meaning, sin damages relationships. The consequences, 3 verse 14 through 19. God addresses each party. Serpent, cursed. When many Christians see Genesis 3:15 as the first prophecy of Jesus, offspring crushing the serpent's head, called the Proto-Evangelium, first gospel. Woman, pain in childbirth and relational struggle. Man, work becomes difficult. Earth, cursed with hardships. Major consequence, death enters the world. Expulsion from Eden. Genesis 3, verse 20 through 24. Adam names Eve, mother of all living. God makes garments for them. Important. God still cares for them despite sin. They are removed from Eden. Why? To prevent eating from the tree of life and living forever in a fallen state. Meaning that humanity is separated from perfect fellowship with God. We're now in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Cain is born. Adam and Eve have a son, Cain. Eve says, "With the help of the Lord I have brought forth a man." Meaning, even after exile, life continues. Hope still exists. God's story with humanity isn't over. Major themes of Genesis 1 verse 1 through chapter 4 verse 1. Number 1, God is creator. Everything begins with God. Number 2, humans have dignity. People are made in God's image. Number 3, free will matters. Adam and Eve had real choice. 4, sin breaks things. Relationship with God, others, self, and nature, which becomes damaged. 5, God still shows mercy. Even after sin, God seeks Adam and Eve, clothes them, allows humanity to continue. 6, hope begins immediately. Genesis 3 hints redemption is coming. In a Christian reading, this points toward Jesus. A simple one-sentence summary clarifies that Genesis 1 verse 1 through chapter 4 verse 1 tells how God creates a good world, but humans chose disobedience. Sin entered creation, humanity lost Eden, and hope for restoration quietly begins. Genesis 5 verse 1 through 32. The family line from Adam to Noah. Genesis 5 is a genealogy, family record, but it is more important than just a list of names. It traces the line from Adam to Noah and repeatedly says, "and then he died." This phrase appears over and over. Why this matters? In Genesis 3, God warned that sin would bring death. Genesis 5 shows that consequences become a reality. Even long lives end. Adam in God's image, 5:1 verse through 3. Genesis reminds readers that humans were made in the likeness of God. Adam then has a son, Seth, in his own likeness, meaning that humanity still reflects God's image, but now exists in a fallen condition after sin entered the world. Long lifespans. People live extraordinarily long lives. Adam, he lived for 930 years. Seth lived for 912 years. Methuselah was alive for 969 years. Methuselah was alive for 969 years. Longest recorded lifespan. Common interpretations. 1, literal view. They actually lived that long. 2, symbolic view. Numbers carry meaning or significance. 3, ancient literary style, common in early Near Eastern records. So which view do you guys fall under? Let me know in the comments. Enoch, the exception. Genesis 5, verse 21 through 24. Enoch stands out. Instead of, and he died, it says, God took him. Meaning that Enoch had a unique relationship with God. He walked faithfully with God. Many interpret this as God taking him to heaven without ordinary death. Big theme. Even in a sinful world, closeness with God is possible. Noah is born. Genesis 5, verse 28 through 32. Noah is introduced. His father hopes Noah will bring relief from the cursed ground, meaning that people are longing for restoration after Eden. Noah's name sounds connected to the Hebrew idea of comfort, rest. Genesis 6, verse 1 through 8. Humanity becomes corrupt. This section gets darker. Sons of God and daughters of men. Genesis 6, verse 1 through 4. One of the Bible's most debated messages. Possible interpretations. 1. Angelic beings view. Spiritual beings intermarry with humans. Or 2. The Sethite view. Godly descendants of Seth mixed with corrupt descendants of Cain. 3. Powerful rulers or kings view. Human rulers abuse power. It also mentions that the Nephilim, often described as mighty warriors or giants. Human wickedness grows. In Genesis 6, verse 5, God sees every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil continually, meaning that corruption becomes widespread. Violence and evil dominate society. God's grief in Genesis 6, verse 6. A striking verse says God was grieved. Important idea. This doesn't mean God made a mistake. It shows divine sorrow over humanity's moral collapse. Noah finds favor in Genesis 6, verse 8. While society falls apart, Noah found favor with God, meaning that faithfulness still exists. One righteous person stands out. Genesis 6, verse 9 through 22, Noah and the ark. Noah is described as righteous and blameless among his generation. God tells Noah he will judge the world through a flood. But he gives instructions for survival, the ark. God commands Noah to build a massive ark. The purpose was to save Noah's family, preserve animal life. Noah must bring his family, animals, food supplies, meaning that judgment and mercy happen together. God judges evil but preserves life. Genesis 7. The flood begins. Noah obeys. At age 600, the flood starts. Rain falls, waters burst forth, animals enter the ark. God shuts the door. Symbolic meaning is the protection comes from obedience and trust. The scope of the flood. The text describes overwhelming destruction. Everything outside the ark perishes. Major theological point is that the sin has devastating consequences. This is portrayed as a reset of creation. Genesis 8, waters recede. A turning point here is that God remembered Noah. This doesn't mean God forgot him. It means that God acts on his covenant care. The waters begin to recede. The birds in Genesis 8, verse 6 through 12. Noah sends out a raven, keeps flying, a dove, which returns. Later returns with an olive leaf. This signals land is reappearing. Eventually, the dove does not return, meaning that new life is coming. Peace and renewal begin. Noah leaves the ark in Genesis 8, verse 15 through 19. God tells Noah to leave. Life begins again. Animals spread across the earth. Noah's altar in 8, verse 20 through 22. Let me read that part out of the Bible here real quick. It says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake. Although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. Noah worships God. He builds an altar. God promises he will not destroy all life by flood again. The rhythms of life continue. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter. Meaning that God preserves the stability of creation despite human imperfection. Genesis 9 verse 1, a new beginning. God blesses Noah and his sons. Be fruitful and multiply. This echoes Genesis 1. Humanity is receiving a fresh start. Why this matters? Because Genesis intentionally mirrors creation. Like Adam, Noah begins in a renewed world. Humanity gets another opportunity. But the story also hints human nature has not fully changed. Major themes of Genesis 5 verse 1 through 9 verse 1. 1. Death is now part of human life. Genesis 5 repeatedly emphasizes mortality. 2. Evil spreads when unchecked. Human corruption becomes widespread. 3. God grieves over evil. God cares deeply about human behavior. 4. God judges injustice. The flood represents accountability. 5. Mercy exists inside judgment. Noah and creation are preserved. 6. Faithfulness matters. Noah obeys even when it seems impossible. 7. God offers new beginnings. Genesis 9 verse 1 echoes creation itself. Timeline summary. Genesis 5, Adam plus Noah, genealogy. Genesis 6, human corruption plus Noah, chosen. Genesis 7, flood destroys the earth. Genesis 8, waters recede, Noah survives. Genesis 9 verse 1, humanity starts again. And a one-sentence summary of everything, Genesis 5 verse 1 through 9 verse 1 tells how sin spread through humanity. God judges widespread corruption through the flood, preserved Noah because of faithfulness, and gave humanity a new beginning. Genesis 9 verse 1 through 7, which is God's blessing and new instructions. After the flood, God speaks to Noah and his sons. He repeats a command first given to Adam and Eve. Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. Meaning that this is a new beginning for humanity. Genesis intentionally echoes creation in Genesis 1. Humanity is being restored after judgment. Humans and animals. Genesis 9 verse 2 to 3. God says animals will fear humans. Then something changes. Humans are now explicitly permitted to eat animals. Before the flood, Genesis emphasized plants for food. Now God says, Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. But there is one restriction. People must not eat meat with its lifeblood still in it, meaning that blood symbolizes life. This command emphasizes respect for life, since life belongs to God. This becomes important later in biblical law. The sanctity of human life. 9 verse 5 through 6. God warns against murder. Key verse. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. Why? Because humans are made in the image of God, meaning that human life has sacred value. Murder is serious because every person reflects God. This is one of the Bible's strongest statements about human dignity. Repeated blessing. Genesis 9 verse 7. I'm going to read that real quick. It says, "And as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply in it." Again, God says, be fruitful and multiply, meaning that God still intends on flourishing despite humanity's failures. Genesis 9 verse 8 through 17. God's covenant with Noah. This is one of the Bible's major covenant moments. A covenant means a sacred promise or agreement. God promises, never again will a flood destroy all life. The rainbow sign in Genesis 9 verse 12 through 17. I'm going to read that real quick. And here in the Bible it says, "And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations." So, God gives a sign, the rainbow. The rainbow becomes the reminder of God's promise. Important detail. The promise is not only for Noah. It includes humanity, animals, future generations. Meaning that God commits himself to preserving life on earth. The rainbow symbolizes mercy, faithfulness, promise after judgment. Genesis 9 verse 18 through 19 says, "Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan." Noah's sons are listed: Shem, Ham, Japheth. Ham is identified as the father of Canaan. Why mention this? Well, because it sets up what happens next. The nations after the flood will trace back to these three sons. Genesis chapter 9 verse 20 through 27. And it says, "And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. Then he drank of the wine and was drunk, and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. Then he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." Noah's drunkenness and family conflict. This is a surprising moment. Even after surviving the flood, Noah is still flawed. Noah gets drunk in chapter 9, verse 20 through 21. Noah plants a vineyard. He drinks wine and becomes drunk. He lies uncovered in his tent, meaning that the Bible often shows heroes honestly, flaws included. Noah is faithful, but not perfect. Ham sees Noah naked in chapter 9, verse 22. Ham sees his father exposed and tells his brothers. The exact offense here is debated. Interpretations include 1. Disrespect and shame view. Ham dishonors Noah instead of protecting him. Or 2. Serious sexual wrongdoing view. Some people believe deeper misconduct is implied. Shem and Japheth respond in 9 verse 23. They respectfully cover Noah without looking at him, meaning that honor and dignity matter. Their response contrasts Ham's behavior. Noah's curse in 9 verse 24 through 27. When Noah wakes, he speaks a curse. Surprisingly, he curses Canaan, not Ham. Why Canaan? Interpretations include Canaan somehow participated a prophecy about future nations, or foreshadowing future conflicts with Canaanite people. Noah blesses Shem and Japheth. Important clarification here. Historically, some people misuse this story to justify racism or slavery. That is not the case. The curse is specifically about Canaan, not an entire race or ethnic group. Noah dies in chapter 9, verse 28 through 29. Noah lives 950 years, and then he died. This echoes Genesis 5 and reminds readers even righteous people die. Genesis 10, verse 1, beginning of the nations. This verse introduces what's often called the Table of Nations. It begins tracing descendants of Shem, Ham, Japheth, meaning that humanity spreads across the earth. Nations and peoples begin developing after the flood. Genesis is transitioning from one family story into the story of civilization. Major themes of Genesis 9 verse 1 through 10 verse 1. 1. New beginnings. Humanity receives another chance. 2. Human life is sacred. People bear God's image. 3. God keeps promises. The rainbow symbolizes covenant faithfulness. 4. Sin still exists. The flood didn't erase human weakness. 5. Family choices matter. Honor, disrespect, and consequences affect future generations. 6. Humanity spreads outward. Genesis prepares for the formation of nations. And the timeline summary is 9 verse 1 through 7. God blesses Noah and gives new instructions. 9 verse 8 through 17. Covenant and rainbow promise. 9 verse 18 through 27. Noah's drunkenness and family conflict. 9 verse 28 through 29. Noah dies. 10 verse 1. Nations begin. One sentence summary of all this, Genesis 9 verse 1 through 10 verse 1 tells how God gave humanity a fresh start after the flood, promised never to destroy the earth that way again, yet showed that sin still remained in human hearts as nations began to grow. Okay, we will pick this up on Genesis 10, and we will go all the way up until Genesis 20 on the part 2, and then we will finish Genesis by part 3. We'll end Genesis 30. Part 4 we'll end Genesis 40. Part 5 we'll end here at Genesis 50. Okay. Well, part 5 will finish Genesis. Okay. So the part 2, we will finish up Genesis, and we will start to be moving into the story of Exodus. If you guys have enjoyed this video and deep explanation, deep diving into Genesis and creation, then let me know by smashing that like button and subscribing down below, because it does help my channel grow. And I hope that you guys like the content that I put out. I am trying to put more Christian, godly content out too, because I would like to see a lot more people come and draw closer to God and stuff. So if this helps you do so, then that makes me really happy. And if this does help in some way, in whatever it is that you're going through in life, and this helps, I am glad I'm able to help you with that. But you always do. If you have a Bible, then you can always check it out yourself. You can always look at it, and most Bibles do have a index in the back where if you're going through something, then, like, for example, if you're feeling like sad or something, then you can go into the back of the Bible and look for scriptures on sadness, and it'll give you scriptures to look at. So I don't know if this one has it, but most Bibles do. And but yeah, if you're struggling through something, like right here, here's the subject of if you're wondering more about Moses for a successor, then you can look at Numbers 27 through verse 15 through 17. Then it has, stuff to help you out. You can also just, pray to God, and He will help you too. So I hope that this video helped in some way. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. And I'm going to be doing a lot more videos like this. So the next video that's going to be talked about is the everyday proof of God. So I'm going to be showcasing that on the next video. So hopefully you guys are excited. I'll see you guys then on that video. Peace out for now.